most important sari of all. Now you know the one. The one that you earn the right to wear with pride and show the world, look, I've lived my life disgracefully. You know, people will come to my wake and they will say out loud, she had so much spirit in her, didn't she burn well at the cremation? Oh, so many wasted, useless years spent being nice, in nice saris, among nice people, for nice occasions. All the time thinking wicked thoughts. You know. Longing to escape. Let me tell you, my friends. I have a sari for every aspect of my life. Sari for housework. Sari to relax in. Sari to be stressed in. Saris for shopping. One type of sari for Marks and Spencer's. Another type of sari for market store. Saris for public transport. You know. Saris to sit in a car like the Queen. Saris for Indian weddings. Not a black thread in sight. Saris for British weddings. Anything that goes with my grey fascinator. Saris for funerals. Not a red gold thread in sight. Saris to blend with a sea of beige sweaters at the Abergailey Autumn Club. Saris to be virtuous in. You know the kind. Starch type pin pleats here, starch type pin pleats there. And I'll share this with you because you know you look like the kind of people who are naughty yourselves. Especially you two aunties in front. Saris to be naughty, yes? Fewer pleats for easy access. And don't forget to remove the no entry sign. I've been young once, you know. Sari for every occasion except cremation. So I thought, if I'm going to go down in flames, only silk will do. You know what I mean? I want to have the slow burn. None of this polyester, Japanese, computer-generated designs for me. Only silk handloom, my friends. I want to singe in style. Oh look, somebody spilled wine on this. What's the use of crying over spilled wine? Yeah? Oh, I last wore this sari. Oh God, I'm so old I can't remember. But there it is, the stain for everybody to see. Oh my God, some stupid drunk at some stupid party. It'll wash away, he said. Here, take some money, a crumpled note, and 40 years of the stain. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? A sari is for life, not just Diwali. That was what I was thinking. I mean, my goodness, who wears this anymore? You know, I'm just thinking, I could die in a sari, because with a sari, you can never be mutton dressed as lamb. My grandmother had her navel on display. Even God had her navel on display. Yes. What was I thinking of? Collecting and collecting and collecting all these years. No one wears the sari anymore, not even my nieces back home. Car boot sale, she says. This is my best friend, Diana. Lady Di, I call her. More troublemaker than royalty. She likes to tell people what to do. Margaret Thatcher was a role model. She says, I hate all foreigners. Yes, she says that to upset me, of course. She says, I don't see color. I grew up in a mining village. Coal miners would come out all black, so I'm used to black people. But I hate all foreigners now. I know how to push her buttons. So I said, I'm a foreigner. She says, well, you don't count. You speak better English than most. So I say, you're a foreigner. And she shoots her Daily Mail eyes at me. Well, we came here first. That's what counts. You see, with Lady Di, you don't get any bullshit. That's why I like her. She's a bit children in school. She put aside some green things because in those days they never catered for veggies. To be vegetarian was some kind of affliction, you know, some affront to civilized behavior. I could have packed them lunch, of course, but you know, the boys would be teased for bringing smelly food to school. So Lady Di would put an extra $1 for margarine over these overcooked greens. My late husband Ram, God rest his soul, although why he needs rest defeats me. The man spent most of his life sleeping. I'm the one who needs rest. Rest in peace. But not long now, it comes to us all. Am I doing that thing again? I might be having another mini stroke. Now don't worry, I'm not stupid enough to die in front of you. That'll be dramatic, even for me. Oh. My son says, oh, this is funny. This is funny. We went Jamil Brothers. Have you been there, Jamil? Have you been to Jamil Brothers? You should go. Beautiful brinjals, best atta for rotis. Although I never make rotis anymore because I live alone. Who would have thought? After all these years of noise and tamasha, I live alone. Anyway, I'm talking, and my son is looking at me, which should have alerted me that something was wrong because my son never looks at me when he talks to me. Learned that from his father. Apparently, I am talking nonsense. Now, so what's new? But only for a few minutes. So they rushed me to A&E, where they have doctors who just come out of kindergarten. How are we feeling today, Mrs. Patel? I love it when they talk to you like they are sharing the illness with you. And I look at this young doctor, and he looks so young, so thin, so pale. And I say, you should eat more. And he orders a CT scan of my head. Now, Lady Di says I should clear my wardrobe before, you know. She says, I can't do the accent, you know, the Scottish accent. Always sounds like somebody scolding you, you know, like that Scottish politician on TV. What's her name? You know the one I mean. I want to say surgeon. What? 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 Sturgeon. See, I was almost right. Not that. Nicola Sturgeon, right? Now, if you imagine Nicola Sturgeon as a dinner lady, you get Lady Di. Now, Lady Di says, you have no daughters, and your sons are all married to the SS. Yes, all young women are the SS to Lady Di. Stupid sluts. Her husband ran away with one, so she should know. But finally, Lady Di dropped the bombshell. She said, donate your saris to high street charities. There's always a demand for colorful scarves and cushion covers, especially at Christmas. And I thought, how do I tell her? How do I explain that my saris are my friends? You know, like skin, like your second skin. They already think I'm a bit too lali. I mean, this one. Let me tell you. This one holds such a precious memory. I worked for my cousin's wedding. I was nursing my firstborn, and he spent the whole evening under here, upset everybody. Why? It's the most natural thing. And I think maybe it upsets people because it reminds us that we are only animals. Yeah. Like the prospect of dying. This one. 1979, Ram, God rest his soul, finally had a promotion and I was too fat to fit into my marked suit. So I wore this. Bad mistake. Of course, everybody stared at me or treated me like a circus sideshow. Oh, how marvelous! Look how it flows. 6 yards? Really? Couldn't you think of anything simpler? Is there no simpler costume? Can't you be stitched into it? Nothing ready-made? Or they just ignored me. This one. Oh, this one smells of another country, another life. You know, I can never bear to wash I washed one sari once and hung it up to dry like I would back home. Of course it was winter and it froze and crumbled into dust. That's why when relatives or friends go back to India, I send some saris with them, because do you know how much it is to dry clean a sari in this country? 25 pounds! So I sent it off to India to be dry cleaned. I know, it's a long way to go, but my saris are precious. Were precious. Oh, what does it matter now? When you get to my age, nothing matters. You. Yes, I think this will suit you. Don't look at me. Giving you a gift. You know how to drape it. I'm not going to drape it for you, I'm too tired. Now, that's 80 different ways to drape. Okay? So, you'll have to find the right one for you. Bit like Match.com. Daytime television. Yes? Daytime, I know. A fellow sufferer. Daytime television queen I found. Ladies and gentlemen. Now don't you be making cushion covers or curtains with this. Yes? If you need to use it as a throw it on something important. Think Ming Dynasty, not IKEA. You. Don't look at me like that. This fine specimen of a only I was a bit younger, a bit smaller. Think Pope. Bring out your inner Desmond Tutu. Okay? Absolutely. Don't laugh at him. Bless him. Look, he's brave little man. Love it. Now, I know it used to baffle me as well. Men in frocks. Until I saw the Archbishop of Canterbury and it reminded me, of this festival in India where men wear saris to worship the goddess. Now, tell me, who is the goddess in your life? Who is the goddess in your life? Mother, sister, girlfriend, child, mother, sister. Give us a clue. Mother, goddess. Good answer. Absolutely. Think of your mother. Put yourself in her sari for one day. It will do you a world of good. It will do all you boys a world of good. Jeremy Kyle won't have a show. Isn't he brave? Give him a clap. So where was I? Should I tell you this? Do you have time? Of course. Because I don't have enough time. But you're so lovely. So lovely. It's like the old days. Come for tea. Let's have tea. There's always a first time to wear a sari. My sari came in a box that smelled of sandalwood and rotting jasmine and a hint of mothballs in there as well. Now, I would love to tell you that I felt like a princess. I would love to tell you that I felt like a goddess, or like Nargis, or like Sophia Loren. I would love for my hero to just appear from a distance when the smoke clears. He will be handsome, slightly overweight, all makeup and broom cream, and moustache. Those days, moustache always works. And imagine me, don't have to laugh so hard. A child bearing that. Oh. Admiring looks. Oh. He will kiss my exposed waist. Nothing will be out of place. Nothing, not even the rain, can ruin my happiness. That didn't happen. It was that red stain of shame on the skirt of my uniform. 1 minute, you're a carefree child, only 11. Chafed knees and awkwardness and growth spurts and unwanted hair. The next minute, you're confined to the dark room at the back of the house. Confinement. Because the floodgates have opened for the first time, and some uncle, some distant relative, with a distant voice says, "You are now dirty." And in my 11-year-old mind, in that room, with only the foam mattress and ceiling fan and wuthering heights for company, in my 11-year-old mind, the blood and the sari were the same thing. The end of carefree days. I learned tradition. I was bleeding from this secret place that the women in my family whispered about when they gathered for feasting and prayers. All the pujas pray to every known god. My mother looked pained because she realized I too was one of them. Women with secrets. I too will marinate in their world. I learned duty. So, at the first sign of womanhood, you are at the back of the house, reading about Patty and Heathcliff and dark love, watching the children play outside. Only for a while, my father says. Doesn't make eye contact. We will bathe you in milk. It's a ritual. I learned shedding, waiting to wear my first sari that came in a box that smelt of sandalwood and rotting jasmine and a hint of mothballs in there. I learned, and I vowed I will never let my daughter or my daughter's daughter go through that, ever. But I had boys, and that was that. They will inherit their own memories. Top gear memories. Loud memories. They didn't care for anything else. It wouldn't occur to them the burden I carry, the second skins I have to peel off and find new bodies for. I'm standing on a curb, waiting for a taxi. All dressed up for a wedding or something trivial. And this little girl smiles at me from across the road, playing with a plastic toy. Where's her mother, I wonder? Not far, perhaps. Harmless thing, playing like she's done 1,000 times before. She knows not to step off that curb into the traffic and the madness. Split second. I blinked. And there she is. A tangle of golden curls and plastic toy and white dress with red cherries on it. And I stood there like a temple statue, stony and erect, like a witness. I can't reach her. My sari's too tight, too itchy. I can't bend. Maybe I'll dirty it with her innocent blood. So I just wait for the others to reach her. They had disposable, dispensable clothes. They were free to help her. And I thought, I am wearing the most elegant sari. And it was all too late.
Passing it on, she said, passing the sari, dragging me back in time, dragging the sari. Passing it on, she said, passing the sari, dragging me back in time.
Looking at sari from a woman's point of view. The reason I started to write about the sari is because as an immigrant many times over, I was looking for metaphors to express the migrant experience. And one of the things I noticed, I live in Manchester, was that the first generation of South Asian women stopped or maybe don't wear the sari in the public space anymore. It's almost as if the sari's gone into the closet, and we only sort of see it in maybe rituals or in weddings and traditional activity. And I wanted to investigate that. And what we did was and it's I hope part of an ongoing process, is to try and get really at the heart of what the sari means to people, because it's a complicated garment for all of us. As maybe this excerpt presented to you, it is very complicated for me. And I'm always struggling with the idea of how I'm looked at when I'm wearing a sari. So these are sort of first-person accounts, people's history of their relationship with the sari, and we're calling it a Sari Tale. And I hope that if you have your own personal Sari Tale, please get in touch with us, because we'd love to record it, because I think it's an important piece of history. And so enjoy, and then we'll have the panel discussion after. Thank you.
So I think we're ready to start, I think. First of all, thanks, Rani, for that wonderful performance. Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah? I think I'm speaking to the mic, yeah. You were treated to some very beautiful vocal and musical composition by Renu Arora, Santos JP, and Sujith G. And also, I wanted to quickly thank Pablo Fernandez-Vaz, who's been doing the lighting for us, and Shanaz Gulzar, who's at the back, discreetly filming, and also the director, who may have just left, Kim Sykes. So thank you very much for their participation in the Whose Sari Now. And as you saw, it was an excerpt, and I think Rani talked about that too. So if you want to see the play, we'll talk about the tour later on, so you can catch it in its full glory later on in November. Ananaya, quick thanks to you as well for participating in the documentary A Sari Tale, and I believe...
couldn't help it, you invaded my home.
For willingly participating in the documentary. And I believe we have two other people in the audience too, Preya and Raksita Shah. Thank you so much. So I'm going to quickly wave to you. I haven't said hello to you yet. So thank you so much for being very generous with your time, and we loved doing the filming there. Just kind of very quickly, synopsis about this panel discussion. It's going to be a fairly informal affair, you'll be pleased to know. And we're kind of looking at the synergy between what you saw in terms of the excerpt of the play, Whose Sari Now, as well as the Sari Tale, the digital screening. And the themes that we're going to try to explore and address are essentially themes that come out from those from both the play and from the screening. There's going to be a lot of, I suppose, discussion and puns, I guess, about weaving text and weaving discussions and
finding new material.
Lots of material. So try to bear with us.
We're sorry for it.
Lots of sorry jokes too. And once we've had the panel discussion, we'll break into a Q&A, 10 to 15 minutes. And then I understand we have drinks later up in chapters, which is situated on the first floor. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce my two esteemed colleagues. So on my left, you may have already gathered from watching the screening, is Professor Ananaya Jahanara Kabir, who's a Professor of English Literature. She has a catalogue of production in terms of cultural and literary production. She has also interests spanning multi-art forms from music, dance, visual arts to literature, all with a academic basis. I think we're going to get somebody to come to. Are you going to clean? Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay. Sorry, we had a kind of ritualistic baptism of this.
We propitiated
table.
our ancestors with some water. It was, but it's fine. I think it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, and just to say that, obviously in 2011, Ananaya was awarded a British Academy Leverhulme Senior Research Fellowship to complete a monograph on the partition of India. And during 2013 to 18, she'll lead a research project on the Afro-diasporic rhythm cultures and modernity. She's spearheading modern moves, those of you who don't know, here at King's College. And on my right, she would have been already introduced to Rani Moorthy, a performer, playwright, and artistic director of Rasa Productions, founded in 1998, and whose aim is to artistically celebrate the enduring migrant experience through powerful and critically acclaimed theatre journeys. We've toured internationally and nationally, and Whose Sari Now is the 11th play written by Rani for Rasa. Malaysian-born and came to Britain in 1996, spent many years as an actress, writer and director in Southeast Asia. She's taught theatre and performance at Nanyang Technological University and was drama consultant for the National Arts Council in Singapore. As a writer, with television credits including Doctors, Granada Shorts. You've written plays for Radio 4. I could go on, but and recently you were in the production for East is East as well. So. Welcome to them both. I should say at this stage as well, we had, those of you who've read the programme, we did have Sinthujan Varadaraja, this wonderful Tamil names that we have, who was due to be on the panel, but unfortunately he's unable to make it because he was offered a job in Berlin working with people seeking asylum, so we won't begrudge him that at all. And but he was going to look at issues around caste, and so we'll endeavour to discuss that topic in our discussion as well, and try to do it justice. Just a quick introduction to myself. I'm a producer for Rasa Productions and also curator in contemporary visual culture from South Asia, which includes Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. I've been curating and conceiving exhibitions for the last 20 years. I've written a few publications, about a dozen or so, on South Asian artists and mentored artists who. Recently, I did a site-specific project for the Tour de France in Yorkshire, and I've also done site-specific commissions for Manchester International Festival. So I think that's enough about me now. And we'll go straight into the discussion. I mean, you can see that we're probably living up to probably the embodiment of the title of the festival, Fabrication, all three of us with our saris, or adorned in saris. Those of you who know, so bear with me if you already have that sort of existing knowledge. The sari is about 6 to 9 yards of cloth. It's a Sanskrit word for a strip of cloth. And, there are over 85 ways of wearing the sari, if not more. I'm sure they're probably reinvented each time. I think I may well have invented one this evening. Also that it's originated, or said to have originated, from the Indus Valley civilization, so from the Bronze Age, which is roughly about 3000 BC, And one of the earliest, those of you who don't know, Indus Valley Civilization was located in sort of northwest Pakistan, East Afghanistan, Eastern India region. So it had quite, obviously contemporaneous with Mesopotamian cultures too. And one of the earliest known depictions of the sari in this Indian subcontinent is that of a statue of the Indus Valley priest who's wearing a drape, which is quite interesting segue into our discussion about whose sari is it anyway. In terms of the sort of different regional styles that we've kind of, and we will touch upon as well in terms of our own saris that we're wearing, there are so many variations. The Bengali sari, for example, I think it was wrapped around the body 3 times. The sari from Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu is, you can wear it pulled between your legs as well. So there's so many different variations. So, Ananya, you talked a little bit about that in the video, and I just wondered if you could, you're wearing quite incredible colours, so do you want to give us a bit of an insight into how and why do you wear the sari?
This particular ensemble or in general?
Let's talk about what you're wearing today, actually.
Because I think in general we heard enough about me going on and on. So today, well, firstly, I must say that I only learned to wear the sari in one way, which is a kind of modern Indian way. So I have worn the sari on a couple of occasions in the traditional Bengali style, which is basically, as you said, just kind of wound around the body without any pleats. And it looks a little shapeless. So, so kind of like, I don't think it's, I don't like it. So I don't even actually know how to put it on myself. So this is a sari style that I learned, and it's kind of pretty normal, I think, that in India, most people just kind of learn to wear this style. It was formalized in British times. It's a Victorian construct, actually, to wear it with what we call a blouse and a petticoat or the underskirt, which holds everything together. So we still use the English words, at least in Bengal and in many parts of India, too. In Bengal, we also use the word shaya, which is actually from the Portuguese for skirt. So that's quite interesting because, of course, the Portuguese were also in Bengal before the British. Anyway, but today, my petticoat, which I won't show off too because it is an undergarment, after all. We must respect that. Believe me, it matches my sari. That's extremely important. So, my petticoat is matching my sari. My sari is a linen sari made in, so it's kind of unusual. It's a modern sari. It's made by a kind of outlet in Calcutta called Bailoom, and they do very nice modern handloom style. So I liked it because it's quite netty, it's kind of spaced out. And I like the fact that it's kind of got one color and plays on it, so I can really do many different things with it if I want. I like the sari. It's emotional. I bought it 2 years ago when my youngest nephew was coming to India for the first time. So we had a little party for him and my older nephew. So I was wearing it in India, but with a red and yellow traditional looking blouse, albeit sleeveless and cut quite low. It was not planned to be a sari blouse at all. I made it in India to wear with a pair of short shorts, also in black. But I thought the colors and the little Sgt. Pepper style, I don't know, I just felt like putting it together. So I put it together. It was ad hoc. I put it together this morning. And I got a beautiful present of a black leather bag yesterday from Paris from our colleague Catherine Servan-Schreiber, who came for another event of Fabrication yesterday. So I wanted to use that black bag. So I thought, if I want a black bag, I need a black blouse. This will work. Yeah. And then, I don't know, this is from Paris as well, from a long time ago. So I maybe, again, thinking of Catherine and my black Parisian bag, I threw this on, and I had a Brazilian thing, but I lost the other earring, so I'm just wearing one earring, but it's not intentional. I don't usually do that, and yeah, I think that's it.
So it's quite a cross-cultural
It's all over the
affair.
place, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you.
Turn to me.
Turn to you,
Yeah.
Rani.
The rat bag.
Well, what I find quite interesting is in Mukhalika Banerjee's book, The Sari, that she co-wrote with Daniel Miller, very aptly named The Sari. No prizes for guessing what it's about, but she talks about the sari as not just an object of clothing, but also as a lived garment. And it's quite interesting because it's talking about also the idea of how a person inhabits a sari, or the sari inhabits a person, and an expression of who we are and who we might become, a sort of personal aesthetic and style. So, Rani, I just wondered if you could just let us know. I mean, I know there's a story attached to this sari.
I do have a personal aesthetic and a personal style. Now, you know a little bit. I mean, some of the character that I played has some personal resonances as well, in the sense that for a long time I resisted wearing the sari because of that complicated gaze, and how, in a way, I didn't want to sort of feel as if especially when you grow up a minority within a kind of Malaysian context where, you know, you're already seen as the other, and then the sari kind of amplifies that. And I found that really a very complex issue. I couldn't articulate it, obviously, when I was growing up. So it took me a long time to embrace the sari in my own terms. So for me now, it holds, especially as a migrant, it holds memory. I specifically chose this one, which is a Mysore silk sari, because my father, my late father, bought it for me in the early 90s when in Singapore, Nallis of Chennai came to Singapore for the first time. And this was the new trend. And it's interesting how men, and I'm not interested, the second part of the Sari trilogy is really the male perspective and how men, go to these amazing auctions in Varanasi and all, and get the bales of sari. The taste of men is because they sell the saris. So we, in a way, are appropriating men's taste in saris, and that wonderful public space in which a man can actually sell a sari to a woman who he's not related to and use incredibly sensual language. It's a very interesting thing, I thought. And so for me, the whole personal engagement, my father is very involved in colors. He used to buy my mum a sari and always hide it somewhere in the cupboard so she will discover it, because she'll always complain, it's too grand for me. Give me a Nilac sari anytime. I don't want these Kanchipurams because it's a nightmare to dry clean. We already know about that. So, it's an incredibly visceral experience for me to really put it on, because I have now learned to embrace it in my own terms. I am not now having the hang-up of aunties and several, very, very strident people in my family who told me that there's a particular way to wear it. I mean, some people will be shocked at some of what you were saying about how, we play around. The idea that you can be creative with a sari, the idea that you can express your identity in the sari came to me incredibly late in life. And so that's part of the wonderful engagement I'm now having with it.
Yeah, I just wondered, following on from that, if you could just give us some context about the genesis of the character you played, Amama, and her relationship with the sari.
Yes, Amama, a woman who is near death, is the character I played, and someone who doesn't care anymore. Pretty much like my grandmother, she used to she became incredibly sexy when she was 80. She would talk about things that I just come out of her mouth like, no filter. So I just realized that this is something I was observing, obviously, and I really love that aspect of an older woman character, because we don't get enough of that. And as I'm becoming an older woman now myself, I'm very aware that I don't want that invisibility. I want to make these characters incredibly visible, funny. They have a life of a sensuality, the memory of the past. It's all there. It's just to bring that out, And I really am interested in what happens in this land of lost saris. Because when you are a migrant, when, let's say, a Sri Lankan Tamil like myself, and you've been displaced, and in fact, maybe you're one of the characters in my play, I mean, she took her only thing that she took from her home was her wedding sari, because the sari carries your DNA. It carries that whole cultural perspective. And so I'm interested in what happens in Britain, let's say, when your children don't want your saris. Who do you bequeath it to? Do we recycle it? What happens? So it's that idea of an older person feeling a sense of loss, and that sense of loss is a completely attached. It's that second skin, isn't it? That skin of memory, and that feeling that your life has gone by, nobody noticed it, and you've collected these amazing treasury of each story and engaged in each and encapsulated in each sari. So it's more than a strip of cloth. It is an incredible piece of your history. And that personal history holds validity, just like each personal story holds validity. And when mothers tell that story to daughters and fathers to sons, you have that connective tissue to a sense of that history. And really, that is the migrant story. And we are all migrants, separated by time and a few details.
Yes. I mean, that's really interesting segue, but into the next area where we're looking at sort of migration, colonialism, and the impact of colonialism. But Ananaya has just reminded me that I haven't spoken about my sari. So just very briefly, this is actually by a designer in Sri Lanka from Kandy called Barbara Zanzoni, who was born in Sri Lanka, and she's an artist. And really interesting that her work, her textile design, she runs a gallery called Barefoot Gallery in Colombo. And her textiles designs are very much inspired by the flora and fauna of Sri Lanka and the countryside. And she loves these brilliant hues and creates very bold geometric patterns. And I have to thank Ananaya for putting the sari on me, actually. And
but we also bought the sari together in Sri Lanka.
Indeed, yeah, on one of our trips for a curatorial project. And just to say that this is actually from Afghanistan. So I think between us all, we're kind of covering most of the region. But that brings us, as I said, a nice segue into the impact of colonialism on the sari. You touched upon, the sort of Victorian construct about the choli, which is the vest or underwear that you wear underneath the sari, which wasn't typical when we look at early sculptures. From the period where the sari was just worn as a dress and covered, but there was no choli worn underneath. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Ananaya?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, and as you correctly point out, even today in the villages in South Asia, you will find women draping the sari amazingly around them. You can't see what's underneath, but there is no blouse or choli, or there's no, there's nothing tailored underneath it. And I think that the word choli that you use is also interesting, because that's, of course, the backless kind of tied blouse that you see in places like Rajasthan and Western India. So where, from what I know, the sari actually developed upwards. Like, I think in those parts of the subcontinent, there was a kind of underskirt and the choli, and then a kind of a strip of cloth. So I think the strip of cloth is the common thing, long or short. The strip of cloth was draped to kind of cover the front of the body, but then it became longer and longer and became like enveloped the petticoat or whatever, the underskirt, which then became. So I think that these fragments of different kinds of regional women's wear were then assembled in Victorian, India to produce a bourgeois woman fit to traverse the public sphere, to be educated, to go out of the house. So it became a little more constructed, It's a story which is similar to the men's turban, actually, and there have been anthropologists who've written about that.
I remember you, earlier on in a conversation that we had a while back, you were talking about indentured labour, and particularly over labourers coming from Bihar to the Caribbean, and how the sari was used as a mechanism of transport of seeds to help people kind of bring a piece of their home life or other life back to this new life. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, this is again things, fragments from reading and just again expanding my own sphere of knowledge to the Indian labour diasporas. So I'm sure something similar must have happened in the Eastern Indian Ocean too. But obviously, when you imagine people travelling by ship on these long journeys, and people who are not really either in possession of too many material things, and they cannot take too many material goods. And certainly they don't have suitcases and, you know, bags with zips and things, you know. So where do you put your stuff? So you have these little jholas, or you have essentially fabric that's tied up, put on the end of a stick, or indeed, if you're a man, you've got your kapra, you know, you've got your piece of cloth, which becomes like a lungi or a dhoti, and you use the edges of those strips of cloth. For the women, the sari, I understand, were often sewn to create pouches, like which would then contain things like seeds of plants that were taken across the oceans to then be planted, so that the minute you arrived, you at least had some familiar, like, foodstuffs. And so that's again the stuff of memory that's being transported in the sari across. And you could do the same with bits of jewelry. You would just tie, like the end of the sari could just contain something, and you'd make a knot, so it became, you know, like a bag.
Yeah, absolutely. It's multifunctional.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the Jamdani style sari, which originated in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, I believe, has, I understand, become what's UNESCO just allocated or subscribed to is an intangible cultural heritage of humanity as a masterpiece for its particular style, which I find very interesting in many ways, because I think that's quite an unusual step to take around a sari, because there's been a revival in its production. And it's also kind of part of a national or potentially nationalistic discourse around who does the sari belong to, essentially. And the sari, and post-partition, was, I mean, my family are from Kashmir, and my mother wore a sari, and wore a sari when she came to the UK as well. And how we associate the sari with a particular either religion or country, and it's obviously worn in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and India. So I wondered if, Rani, if you want to talk a little bit about the idea of national identity around the sari and what that means and its status too. You can break it down. If
I'm the last person you should ask about. Okay, this is someone who doesn't believe in nationality anymore because of all the different migrations that I've had in my own personal life. I'm interested in also the idea of social constructs. Caste is one of them. It's something so difficult to talk about, but it's impacted on my life personally, and obviously I'm very aware of the fragile communities who are craftspeople, who create the amazing, like you say, you know, recognized by UNESCO, these amazing creations that are hundreds of years old, passed down through generations of very fragile communities, itinerant most of them, and of weavers who are handloom weavers, and that's an industry that is just needs desperately help to be sustained, because that's whole debate going on about handloom versus machine, and
there's a certain quality attached to handloom that there's
yes, but it's become a social and it's an elitist thing, and that communities that create it are not. And obviously are from a lower caste, for example. So I've taken on a character in Whose Sari Now because I'm so aware of people who create these amazing saris, but who are not entitled to wear them themselves, who are conditioned to be completely aware that they can't wear their creations. They could never do that. And to have that, to be aware of something like that is something that came very, very late to me. I didn't realize how these communities existed and are struggling to survive, really. And it just made me aware of how caste played such an important part in terms of entitlement, that, in the past, when they didn't have the sari blouse, upper class women and upper caste women would wear jewelry because they could afford it. And that was the kind of legacy, and so this whole new trend now, this, wear 100 saris a year, is that whole idea. And again, 100 sari pact. Now in India, of course, we all know, I mean, the difficulty of negotiating a 6 yards of sari. Have you all tried wearing a sari? I mean, just try it once, because really, you'll be more secure in a bikini sometimes than in a sari. Am I right? That whole idea of being slightly exposed. And I think men should try this as well. Because I think it's really revealing. It reveals something, you know, and it's exposing. And it's a funny...
Yeah,
you know, until you've tried it, you won't realize what I'm talking about. It's what I remember. I used to get on the bus in Singapore, and the bus driver used to zoom ahead, you know, and I nearly toppled. And I told him, listen, 6 yards of this sari held by one safety pin, you know, everything will just fall off. And that's my Singapore accent. Sorry, but that's. I just had to tell him that, because the real, you know, they think that it's so much cloth, and that's actually, you know, you're wrapped up really neatly. But actually, there's just that pin, and once that goes and something goes, everything goes. See what I mean? So fragile communities. Sorry, where I went, I don't know, but I'm sorry.
We were there with you,
yeah, you were there.
all the way. I mean, that brings us into the idea of, I guess, sacred spaces too. You obviously were talking about the Brahmanical tradition, but also women entering spaces like temples and covering their hair with the pallu, which is this end of the sari that goes over the shoulder. How does that feed into your idea about who wears a sari and a priest, etc.?
Yes.
And that comes into also your...
Well, anyone who wore sari in my personal life was immediately given or bestowed virtuosity, virtuousness. You know, that you're highly virtuous. Am I making sense? Moral. Yes. You suddenly, your cousins in Sri Lanka would be so proud of you, because suddenly you have been uplifted morally just because you put this garment on. That the jeans and t-shirt suddenly just, you know, doesn't even create any of this, that you're so debauched, and suddenly, almost like a miracle, you're in the sari, and there's the incremental sari, you know, the half sari, and then you suddenly they decide, okay, now you're ready for the full sari, and therefore you're ready for, you know, that gaze of, potential, you know, engineer, doctor, lawyer, accountant. All look like bank clerks to me. You know, I had to serve tea. Now, my mother is here, so I'm sorry, Ma. It's just that I think that, you know, I'm talking in terms of, you know, a really more global experience. So people of my generation, now I was talking to some young women this afternoon of a generation, maybe two, you know, they're 2 generations younger than me. And I think that we're still in that same cycle. I don't think that it's so I'm not talking sort of, you know, in a time warp. I think it's pretty much that whole idea that, the sari bestows upon you some kind of virtuous qualities, Brahmanical qualities, that you are now the good Hindu girl, in my case. Yeah. You know?
And also the artist Raja Ravi Varma recreated these idealistic depictions of women that sometimes adorn many the interior of many homes in India. Ananya, did you want to add?
No, I mean, obviously that's kind of, again, a straight line from the colonial kind of construction of a certain kind of modern Indian woman, and then somebody like Raja Ravi Varma kind of takes that same sort of drape and makes some sort of mythical Mother India kind of sacralized figure out of it. But I will add that growing up in India, for us, we played a lot with the sari as well. So of course there were all those, but that's, I think, the difference of growing up in a culture where everybody's more, I mean, the sari is ubiquitous in a certain way, and especially in Bengal, people wear saris, and we kind of grow into the saris. The half sari is, of course, more a South Indian thing. So because I also spent a part of my life in South India, I knew about it. But you know, so these are all the regional variations, really, that we were talking about earlier. But anyway, yeah, for us, there was, I mean, that was what I was alluding to in the in one of the sort of little anecdotes I was reminiscing about, how we were like from convent school where we were in skirts and you know, and socks and shoes and ties, and then suddenly we were released into the another kind of public space of the university, which was more, in a way, more demotic. And that was when we were challenged as Anglophone girls to don the sari by our male counterparts. And it was kind of all play acting and fun and games. So that's what I meant when I said that certain kind of constructions were going on around the sari. Most of my friends, though I do know, we very late in life chose our own saris. We often wore our mother's saris. We made a blouse that fitted us, but we wore their mother's saris. Then we got married and people gave us lots of saris, and many were very expensive, but they were not necessarily to our taste. So you really had to develop your own sari personality, and that was not something that you started doing the first moment you wore a sari. And the virtuosity you're talking about, the virtuousness, sorry. Sorry.
It's catchy.
I know, it's kind of a Freudian slip, why we like that word. But what we mean is that the idea of being virtuous in a sari, I think, is part of the first phase of being led to a sari. And then, of course, you can just, if you wish, do more with it.
And there's also the idea of the power sari and how that sort of comes into play. And there's an iconic image of Indira Gandhi when she met Ronald Reagan, President Ronald Reagan, and she was wearing hand-woven, handloom sari that was looking at, you know, a very positive impact of what, again, reiterating that idea or underpinning the idea of caste, privilege, power. Do you want to add anything around the idea of power sari, Rani?
Well, for me, a sari, like I say, I came back to it as an adult because as a larger woman, one size fits all. And that did it for me. I loved the fact that I, you know, could stand out in a crowd because, you know, I'm such a wallflower and so shy. Among a sea of little black dresses, I would, you know, stand out. So that was my, you know, kind of very, very sick take on being, you know, noticed. But actually, as a way of expressing, I mean, I just so admire the way in which you can be creative and really, you know, embody that sense of the power sari. I'm not there yet because I'm still looking at it as a way of re-engaging, I suppose, and you know, it's a way of being close to my mom, to that generation who you know really used it as a garment. It's another thing to do your work in, to be yourself in, and just to be, you know, easy with this is I'm still at that stage. I can't even think about actually experimenting with it. I know I'm still in that kind of conventional, and I think, it's a psychological shift, I would say. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does that make sense to, you know?
I just, thank you so much. I just wondered, we've got sort of 10 minutes left, and I wanted to throw any questions out to the audience, if you have any. If not, we can just keep talking. Does anybody have any?
So, you've got a whole sari thing.
There's a mic coming to you.
I'm sure. There's a mic coming to you, so everybody can hear you.
Hello. So, you've got the whole sari thing going on.
Speak in the mic. Can you bring it closer to you? It's on. It looks on.
No, it's on.
Let them check if it's on.
Sorry.
Hello, hello. 1 2 1 2. I mean, the room's not that big. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
How do we make it more mainstream? How do we walk down the street and say, I'm wearing a sari, get used to it?
You just wear it and walk.
Wear it to work?
You know, it's not a big deal. The main thing is, are you comfortable wearing it? You know what I mean? Because as Rani said, there is it's not, it's like it gets between your legs, and, you know, especially if you're wearing tights, the petticoat has a static with the tights. That's why, you know, the boots are actually good, because there's no static. So there are some things that you have to do to feel comfortable, that you can be yourself in this thing and not feel like you're impersonating somebody else, or it's somehow cramping your style or your speed.
So maybe more of us should do it, because one of you
Yeah.
your mother saying how perhaps it didn't, you know, work out in the way that she hoped, and my mother, I think, had the same experience, that she was wearing a sari and it just wasn't a thing. So maybe it's
It is context. It's context. If you're talking about wearing the sari in this country, in, for example, down the Strand or something, of course you can do it. Why not? Anybody can wear anything. But it's, for me, it's always practical. Like, I think what kind of sari would suit this climate, what material, how, as I said, how would it work? Because I don't want what I'm wearing to get in the way of my daily life. So that's the decision for you, if you wanted to do this, to experiment with a few saris and feel what material, you like. People usually think of sari and color, but the feeling and texture of saris is extremely important because that's how you feel comfortable. So get the texture that suits you and the accessories that go with it and make you feel comfortable, and go for it.
And maybe some base layers.
Some bracelets?
Base layers, yes.
Yeah, base layers, yeah.
And bracelets too.
Yeah, you need just like...
Warm underpinnings, I call them.
No. I disagree. I disagree because the sari is actually it's like a Victorian, like, ladies' garment, because the petticoat and things, so you just need a pair of tights. And you need in the winter, you just need a very clingy jumper that's short. The main thing is that the jumper shouldn't go over the waistline of the sari, because then it'll all bunch up and start looking ugly. So just make sure it just sits on top of where the sari is supposed to start. That's all you need. And a coat. And then the sari can become like your...
So
it's very comfortable.
There's some fashion advice. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
Someone there?
Yes.
Do I do any stand-up
In a sari, you mean?
or not.
Why do you ask? Oh, bless you. Thank you so much.
Rani, this is an opportunity to talk about the tour of Whose Sari Now. Let's not forget.
But do come and see the full show. I would urge you to do that, because it takes you on a journey, obviously. But it's a struggle to be... to write the kind of things I do anyway, because people always think, a brown woman in the cover, she's going to be angry. She's going to be, take us on a downer. She's going to talk about her oppression and how she's, enslaved or something. And I always like to really, really laugh at this, because I think the sign of a mature community is that we're able to laugh at ourselves, and to laugh in a way that is incisive and makes, sort of makes us think a little bit, I suppose. That sounds terrible. I'm sorry. I'm just tired. But you know what I mean. It's just kind of engagement with the work that is slightly sweetens the pill a little bit. Yeah. Because I do, maybe I'm born of teachers, and I have that need to, and I think a lot of writers find it a kind of burden that, you can't just write about your record collection in your attic, as if you're a white writer, you can, and, the National will put it on. But if I wrote that, the National Theatre will put it on, and it'll be, everyone will go and see it, because, oh my God, it's about his record collection in 1979. If Rani Moorthy wrote about her sari collection and said, come and see this lovely, you either expect Bollywood, am I right? This wonderful sort of feeling of, joy and celebration.
And let's not forget
which is
the wet
all,
sari.
And I'm just, because my default mode is always, because at the age of 6, I experienced race riots, ethnic conflict in Malaysia. So for me, the sands shift from under your feet. So I cannot just sit there and be comfortable in anything. So talk to me in 10 years' time, the sari will have, as Shana says, a kind of breastplate. Armor. That will be my power dressing. But the thing is that I think really the comedy goes hand in hand with the kind of the way I have to write as a Tamil who grew up in Malaysia and Singapore and then came to live here. You couch and smuggle in ideas while you're trying to be accessible to an audience who really don't care, don't want to know, thinks you're an angry brown woman, and rather watch football or whatever. But to entice you in, this is in a way I'm talking myself out of job here. This is the way I operate. Comedy comes naturally, so my way of fitting in, I suppose.
I think also I'm going to have to plug the show again.
Oh, I don't plug.
Because you didn't, Rani. So you had the excerpt, and obviously this is one of the 5 characters that Rani will be playing for Whose Sari Now, and the show in its full glory and its full production will be launched at the Curve on the 12th of November, and it's Curve in Leicester. Which is showing from 12th, 13th and 14th of November. And then it goes to, if any of you do travel up north, which is where we're based in Manchester, it's going to the Lowry on the 19th of November. And then we're coming back to London at Rich Mix on the 20th of November. If you want to see you've got a leaflet on your chairs. So please take a look at that. And I hope you can come and see the show. The other thing I need to say at this stage as well, we've got some evaluation forms and pens on the table. If you could kindly fill them in as well. We really value your feedback, or if you want to join our mailing list too. I think just finally...
more questions?
Yeah, were there any other questions that anybody wanted to... Or you're all yearning for some refreshments upstairs in chapters? Shall we? Okay. Wait.
Oh, no.
Oh, beg your pardon. Ananaya, can I pass that over to you?
I seem to have become the fashion consultant. Well, I am obviously not in the corporate world. I'm in the academic world, where we obviously, again, we have more freedom, I think, to devise a persona and adapt what we wish to and stick to it in whichever way. So my cousin, for example, is a barrister, and I don't think she's going to be wearing a sari to the bar, to the temple or whatever, very soon. So there are obviously different protocols that operate. However, and also I grew up in India, so I can talk about the corporate world in India, where a lot of my friends are working in. And very interestingly, so I don't know whether that could shed any light on your situation here, but many of them, when they enter the corporate world, were not wearing the sari at all. It was kind of ironic, because I was wearing more saris in Cambridge than they were wearing in Delhi and Bombay and places. But very many of them have now opted to go back to wearing the sari, and now when I'm kind of slightly post-sari and kind of doing all kinds of crazy things with the sari, they're really happy about wearing traditional kind of heavy saris that signal their kind of power saris. So I think the corporate world in India, at least for my generation, is now seeing a sort of a generation of women who started out by not wanting to wear the sari because they wanted to look westernized and somehow professional, and the sari was not signaling that, but they are now confident enough to adopt the sari, and that tells you quite a lot about the sari, even in its home environment, that people would have to make these decisions. So obviously, I'm sure that there would be even more constraints to adopt it, maybe. But I think if a sari can be like a minimalist, I wear a lot of black saris, sometimes. Like, it can look very minimalist, and it just depends. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't wear anything which was like gold and sequined in that environment in any shape or form. So it's just, again, a question of choosing the color and texture, I feel.
And also in the 1960s, Air India introduced the sari as uniform. I think it's a bit more flexible now, but that was quite a pivotal moment in terms of what the idea of the sari and how it can fit within the context of the commercial or corporate world.
Also, there's health and safety issues.
Do you think so?
In the 70s, in the 50s and 60s,
In
70s, and 70s especially, when there were a lot of workers, in factories, there was this whole issue about wearing a sari to work because of health and safety, that it does get caught in machinery and things like that. So.
Oh, you did? Oh, please, yeah, of course, yeah. Do you want a microphone?
There's a mic
first?
coming.
It's just coming, so everyone can hear you.
All right, it's great.
Yeah.
I work for... Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes.
I work for Air India in Bond Street, and the sari was our uniform. I traveled on the tube, and I didn't feel different. This was in the 70s. It was wonderful, because we the sari was our uniform, and as you said,
Yeah.
we wore the overcoat and wore the sari around as a
scarf,
shawl
yeah.
going home. It was fantastic. And we were we felt at home in the sari, you know, because as you said, we wear it at home, and when we come here, we abandon the sari, which is such a shame, really. It's such a beautiful costume, really. You can't replace it, I think.
I think that's a very interesting and probably good ending to this.
Yes.
We're approaching 9 o'clock, which
Thank
is
you.
when we're due to finish. So I wanted to thank my fellow panelists, Rani Moorthy and Ananaya Kabir. I also want to thank King's College for hosting us and the Arts and Humanities Festival, particularly Pelagio Pez, but she's not here, but she'll see the video. And everybody who's come here, thank you, the audience, for coming and experiencing this. I hope you get to come and see the show. I need to inform you that we've got refreshments at Chapters, which is situated directly above here. Yeah. So as you go out the door, go up the stairs, it's more or less directly above here. So please come and chat to us. We're going to head in that direction soon. So thank you once again very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Fareda.